That top story for you. The battle over those dueling memos. It is intensifying. The release of the Democrats' version now in President Trump's hands just hours after the House Intel Committee votes to unseal it. And Griff Jenkins live for us in D.C. with the new details unfolding at this hour. Good morning, Griff.
Hey, good morning, Heather. The committee voted unanimously to release the Democrats' memo seeking to rebut the Republicans' memo that details FBI surveillance abuse assertions. But whether or not the Democrats' memo ever becomes light of day and the public gets to see it is going to be up to the president, who has 5 days to decide whether or not to declassify it. It's the same review period as the GOP's document, which the president was touting on the road in Ohio yesterday.
Did we catch them in the act or what? You know what I'm talking. Oh, did we catch them in the act? They are very embarrassed. They never thought they were going to get caught. We caught them. Oh, it's so much fun. We're like the great sleuth.
The top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, says he has given a copy of the counter memo to the DOJ and FBI for review out of concern for national security reasons, and is calling on the White House not to make any redactions based on partisan politics.
In our memo, in terms of sources and methods, we want to make sure that those that are in the best position to vet that have the opportunity to do so. We want to make sure that the White House does not redact our memo for political purposes, and obviously that's a deep concern.
But the chairman of the Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, continued to remind Americans on Hannity last night why all of this matters.
This is what the FBI used to corroborate the dossier, which is very, very dangerous, to take political dirt that was paid for by the Hillary campaign and use it against your political opponents. Have the FBI use it and open up an investigation.
We're also learning, Heather, that two senators, Grassley and Graham, have sent a criminal referral to the DOJ regarding the author of that dossier, British spy Christopher Steele. Heather?
Wow, it's like something straight from the movies, but it is actually happening. Griff Jenkins, live for us. Thank you, Griff. Well, Democrats are waging an all-out information war, throwing the power of their party behind their intelligence memo. A syndicated radio host, Mark Levin, is calling it a political stunt meant to protect the one person no one's looking at yet, former President Barack Obama.
Now we know why Schiff and the rest of them are fighting so hard. Now we know why the left-wing Praetorian Guard Democrat media are fighting so hard, trashing Nunes, me, you, and others. Who are they trying to protect? Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. His name never comes up, so let me help everybody with this. Loretta Lynch knew about these FISA warrants. Yates, the Deputy Attorney General. The extensions, Rob Rosenstein, now the Deputy Attorney General, he knew. FBI Director Comey, Deputy Director McCabe, Strzok, the head of counterintelligence, Page, his girlfriend. Who else would have known about these FISA applications and warrants? We're looking at the FBI, we're looking at the Department of Justice, and we're not looking at all at the White House.
Well, Republican Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham are now calling on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to launch a criminal investigation into Christopher Steele, the former British intelligence officer behind the Trump dossier. And that will continue. Well, now a Fox Business alert for you. The Dow plunging more than 1,000 points. That is the biggest one-day drop in history. The blue chip index dipping below 24,000, wiping out all of this year's gains, sending the market's fear gauge to its highest level since 2011. So should we be worried? In just a few minutes, economist Peter Morici joins us live to answer that question. And I want to ask him about that fear gauge, too. Well, President Trump, meantime, is touting his tax reform plan in Ohio, slamming Nancy Pelosi for calling thousands of dollars in savings for middle-class Americans crumbs.
Your paychecks are going way up. Your taxes are going way down. And right now, for the first time in a long time, and you've seen it, factories are coming back. So Nancy Pelosi again said that's crumbs. Well, she's a rich woman who lives in a big, beautiful house in California, who wants to give all of your money away. And she talked about crumbs.
Well, the president also compared Pelosi's crumbs to Hillary Clinton's deplorable comments. Do you remember those during the campaign? And called the House Minority Leader his, quote, secret weapon in the midterm elections. Well, a live look at Capitol Hill for you right now. That is where a lot of work is being done, or it's supposed to be. The House votes today on an interim spending bill to avoid another government shutdown in just 2 days. But yet again, Democrats refuse to budge on DACA. Kelly Wright, live in our nation's capital with what we can expect today. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Heather. The bottom line here is time is running out. House Republicans met last night to discuss plans for funding the government. Sources tell Fox they are considering a 6-week extension through March 22nd. That includes funding the military and extending community health centers.
There isn't much time to waste. And yet, Speaker Ryan is again considering a cromnibus, a short-term extension of funding for urgent domestic priorities, but a long-term extension and a large increase of funding for defense.
Last month, Democrats forced a government shutdown over DACA, a program that protects young people brought to this country illegally by their parents. President Trump set a deadline of March 5th for Congress to act on that matter. Senators John McCain and Chris Coons have presented a bipartisan immigration plan to address that.
It lays out a plan, a pathway towards securing control of the border by 2020. And I expect that in order for this to be embraced by Republicans as the solution that'll get us moving forward towards fully funding domestic and defense spending, we will need to add some border funding to it.
But here's the problem. The White House rejects the current plan because it fails to end chain migration and the diversity visa program, and it does not provide funding for building the border wall the president wants.
Oh, we're building the wall. Believe me, we're building the wall. Don't even think about it. The ones that don't want security at the southern border or any other border are the Democrats. They don't care about the security of our country. They don't care about MS-13 killers pouring into our country.
The president tweeted yesterday urging Democrats to make a deal on DACA as well as avoiding the government shutdown. Heather?
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up as well. Thank you very much, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, to this other Fox News alert for you now. A community lining the streets to pay respects to a sheriff's deputy killed in the line of duty.
We got an officer down, at least one officer down.
Well, Colorado Deputy Micah Flick was responding to a call about a stolen vehicle outside an apartment complex when he was approached by the suspect and shot and killed. Well, that suspect was shot and killed at the scene. 2 other deputies and a police officer also shot and wounded. And Flick is being described as an outstanding detective. He leaves behind his wife and 7-year-old twins. He died on his 11th anniversary with the department. He, by the way, is the 3rd sheriff's deputy in that state to be killed since December 31st. So our prayers with all those folks out there. Well, the data recorder known as the Black Box has been recovered from the Amtrak train that slammed head-on into a parked freight train in South Carolina. 2 people were killed and more than 100 injured. Well, NTSB officials are hoping to find a way or find out why a lock switch operated by the other train's company sent the New York to Miami bound Amtrak onto a side rail. Officials say that the disaster could have been avoided altogether if a GPS-based safety system had been in place to slow that train down. And in just a few hours, Vice President Mike Pence will arrive in Tokyo to strengthen the alliance against North Korea. He will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe about keeping pressure on Kim Jong-un to give up his nuclear weapons program before the vice president heads to South Korea for the Winter Games. He's going to do all that before he heads there.
We're traveling to the Olympics to make sure that North Korea doesn't use the powerful symbolism in the backdrop of the Winter Olympics to paper over the truth about their regime.
He has not ruled out meeting with North Korean officials while in Pyeongchang. While also leaving the door open for talks with North Korea at the Winter Olympics, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson.
Whether or not there would be an opportunity for any kind of a meeting with North Korea, I think we'll just see. We'll see what happens.
Well, the rogue nation sending several athletes and officials to the games in South Korea, which begin on Friday. Tillerson has often said that diplomacy is the best way to handle the regime as it builds its nuclear program. And the time now is 11 minutes after the top of the hour. This Fox News alert for you. Terrorists may change their tactics, but their core mission is still the same.
Most disturbing and quite frankly, kind of what keeps you up at night question, that threat is very real.
Well, the shocking new warning about ISIS plans to bring down a passenger plane. And the Dow opening in just a few hours after the biggest drop in history. But is this cause for concern or just the natural flow of the market? Well, our next guest says there's no need to panic. And what happened? Hillary Clinton taking her blame game to a new level. Wait until you hear this. Well, this Fox Business Alert for you now. The stock market taking a major hit after seeing the Dow plunge over 1,000 points. So what does that mean for your wallet? And should we be worried just yet? Here now to weigh in is economist Peter Morici. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Always love to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
So this was the worst week in 2 years. The Dow wiped out its 2018 gains with its pullback on Monday. So should we be worried?
No, we go through corrections from time to time, and investors had been lulled into complacency because the Trump rally was so continuous with very little volatility. But this is kind of the normal thing that happens in markets. We'll probably go down a little bit further, and then we'll start to recover. The fundamentals of the market are still very good.
Now, this, as we just said, was the largest single day drop in Wall Street history. If we could pull that graphic up one more time for people so they could see at home. This was the biggest drop since August 2015. Is that correct, when the Dow fell 1,089 points? What caused that? Do you remember?
Well, in 2008, that was basically the financial crisis, and we had very different conditions then. You know, we had the mortgage crisis. Banks were in a great deal of trouble. There's no reason to believe right now that our banks are in any kind of difficulty, that loans aren't going to be repaid. The fundamentals of the economy are very strong. You know, normally we get a weak first quarter these recent years, but by all indications, the first quarter growth is going to be strong. The tax cut's going to kick in. Investments are going to pick up. So, you know, there's no reason to believe that profitability is going to be up in the first quarter. We've got very good soundings on that, and it's likely to continue increasing. And profits are what drives the market long term.
Yeah.
So, whereas in 2008, we had hypervaluations way in excess of what we have now. You know, when you look at what we paid for earnings, you know, the price-earnings ratio.
So what about this fear gauge, though? Because people hear fear gauge, and it's gone up 115%. What is that?
Well, there are measures of how concerned the people on the floor of the the stock exchange and money managers are. And the thing is, they've become so complacent, it's not hard to go up 115%. It's just not. You know, as of 10 days ago, if you read the Wall Street Journal, it said that everybody thinks the market can only go up, and that money managers usually hedge their positions in case there's a market decline. And they had decided it's a waste, because that costs money. That's a waste of money. Well, if everybody thinks it's going to go up, then that's a sure sign that we're about to have a correction, because that's the way that works. And once it happens, everybody panics. It's a herd.
Yeah.
And that's what happened yesterday. And I expect the herd to keep running for a while. I don't think we're done with this correction.
That's what I wanted to ask you. You know, what do you think will happen today? And all of this, apparently, because the fears of the growing inflation. But what about the political climate as well?
Well, the growing inflation is not present. Just because interest rates sometimes rise with inflation doesn't mean that rising interest rates mean inflation. You have to ask, why are interest rates going up? And the answer is the Fed is raising rates so they get to a more normal level now that we're out of the crisis. But they're only talking about raising them to, say, 3%. Why? Because they don't see a lot of inflation. It's that simple. For example, wages are growing at their most rapid pace in years, 2.9%. Well, with productivity growth, that gives you inflation of less than 2%, which is the Fed's target. There's nothing to worry about here on the inflation front.
All right.
But again, you know, investors like to have news.
Well, there's a lot of news coming out of this administration. I mean, we have this fear of another government shutdown and that type of thing. But you said, don't worry, don't run for the hills yet.
Absolutely. A government shutdown, who cares? I mean, they keep so many things open as, necessary that basically it's the regulators staying home. Heck, that's good for the economy. I mean, the air traffic controllers work, the roads work and all that. There's nothing really here to worry about, is my view.
All right. Peter, we always like your view. Thank you very much for joining us. Great. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour, and the man at the center of the controversial surveillance memo setting the record straight.
Anyone who had any connection or had ever done any work, positive or otherwise, in Russia was constantly sort of the #1 target for attack.
Well, the exclusive interview with Carter Page that you won't see anywhere else. And welcome back to Fox and Friends First. Treasonous. President Trump calling out Democrats for refusing to stand during his State of the Union address.
They were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not?
Well, Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115, here with the reaction. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, that comment sparking an explosion of reaction on social media, many saying the president's characterization of Democrats committing treason has taken things a step too far. Now, the folks behind the popular dictionary.com Twitter handle decided to tweet out the definition of the word, saying treason is the offense of acting to overthrow one's government or to harm or kill its sovereign, not refusal to applaud. But Ken on social media says the president is spot on, saying that using the phrase was mild and he could actually think of more adjectives that he thinks are appropriate ways to describe Democrats. Olga falls somewhere right in the middle, saying, I don't know if they're un-American for not applauding his speech, but they are definitely un-American for not applauding tax cuts, health care for the VA, and on and on.
Yeah, and jobs, they didn't stand up during that either or clap. So Hillary Clinton, she's blaming something else again for losing.
We've heard this one before, but not for a long time. Hillary Clinton once again blamed her election loss on sexism. Take a listen.
Many of you who've read my book about what happened know that I think that misogyny and sexism was part of that campaign. It was one of the contributing factors, and some of it was old-fashioned sexism.
So Clinton's opponents are now sounding off on social media. Janet says, actually, it's all the corruption, deceit, and lies the American people just can't take anymore. So, and of course, she made this comment, just a couple days after having to defend herself for not firing a former campaign staffer for, after it was revealed that he was accused of sexual misconduct as well.
So the controversy continues over a year later. All right, so Michelle Bachmann is not running for Senate because God answered her.
That's right. And here is what she said. She says, it's become very clear to me that I wasn't hearing any call from God to do this. She revealed earlier that she was mulling over running for Al Franken's vacant Senate seat. Now it looks like she's not doing that. So some of her supporters disappointed. Other people, though, saying, well, that's okay. If it didn't happen, it's not going to happen.
All right. Thank you so much, Carly.
Thanks
Appreciate
so
it. Well, the time now is 26 minutes after the top of the hour. And government shutdown deja vu. Does the so-called bipartisan effort to keep the government open stand a chance without funding for the wall? Our political panel is on deck to debate that. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau creating a firestorm by trying to be gender inclusive. But yeah, the PC lecture spiraling out of control. Well, back now with the Fox Business Alert for you, or Fox News Alert, I should say. The threat of ISIS bombing a passenger plane packed with Americans, it is very real. The House Homeland Security Committee Chairman, Congressman Michael McCaul, issuing the alarming warning, calling for immediate action to shore up security at airports.
Most disturbing and quite frankly, kind of what keeps you up at night, question the crown jewels aviation. And they're still seeking to blow up airplanes, even though they may not be able to hijack it. That threat is very real.
Well, Congressman McCaul says the U.S. must deploy more next-generation airport security scanners, but can't because they're caught up in bureaucratic red tape. And we are now learning that the suspected drunk driver who killed an NFL player was in the country illegally. Indiana State Police say that Guatemalan national Manuel Orrego Zavala had been deported twice and had a previous DUI conviction. He is accused of plowing into the car carrying 26-year-old Indianapolis Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson and his Uber driver, killing them both before fleeing the scene and then giving officers a fake name. His blood alcohol level was reportedly nearly 3 times the legal limit in Indiana and is now awaiting charges. He was already deported from the sanctuary city of San Francisco back in 2007 and 2009. And a central figure in the FISA memo controversy slamming the fake Trump dossier, claiming that it's riddled with lies in order to surveil the Trump camp. In an exclusive interview with Laura Ingraham, Carter Page says he never met with a Russian businessman as claimed in the dossier.
Anyone who had any connection or had ever done any work, positive or otherwise, in Russia was constantly sort of the #1 target for attack. So it was it became a liability pretty quick. I gave a speech, and there was one senior government official who spoke after me. He was walking out of the building after he gave his speech, and we had a very brief conversation for less than 10 seconds. It was really a exchange of pleasantries. But a lot of the things he was talking about, you could tell there were positive opportunities on the horizon in terms of U.S.-Russia relations. So
was that Sechin? Was that Igor Sechin?
No, I've never met Sechin in my life.
It was a great interview. The memo alleges the anti-Trump dossier funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC was the driving force behind that warrant to conduct surveillance of Page. Much more to come on that. And the former British spy behind that fake report going to extremes to avoid answering questions on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And Christopher Steele, who alleged the explosive allegations linking the Trump camp to Russia, a no-show in a London courtroom. Steele skipping a videotaped deposition in a multi-million-dollar case against BuzzFeed, you may remember, published the anti-Trump dossier. And then there's Steve Bannon, who is expected to skip his House Intelligence Committee appearance today, despite having a subpoena. Now, the former advisor to the president will not show up, we're told, because the committee and the White House have not come to an agreement on exactly what questions would be asked by the panel since his last meeting back in January. And the decision could risk him being held in contempt of Congress if he fails to comply, so we'll keep an eye on that today for you as well. And John Mahoney, best known as the down-to-earth recliner-loving father on Frasier, has died. John Mahoney was 77 years old. Well, back to one of our top stories. Trump calling out the latest bipartisan immigration proposal as a total waste of time after Senators John McCain and Chris Coons introduced a plan that does not include funding for the border wall. And the president has made it very clear there's no deal without it. So does a bill like this even stand a chance? And joining me now is Republican strategist Noelle Nickpour. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
So that's a good starting point. Does it even stand a chance?
Well, McCain knew, they knew that what Donald Trump stands for is the wall, that there would be no deal. It was
he said that over and over.
That's what he
no deal without a wall.
Yeah. So the fact that they would actually have the nerve to submit something that didn't even address funding for the wall is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, do I think that there could be some deal struck? Yes, I do. I mean, number one, Donald Trump, the Republicans, they want the wall built. They want funding for the wall. Number two, we have DACA. We have the Dreamers that are hammering it. They want to be protected. So we have a lot of moving pieces that need to be solved. And it's up to the legislator to get this done and bring something, and Trump will sign it.
So strategically, take me through this, and this is what you do for a living. Strategically, why would John McCain and Coons introduce this if they know, because they know too, that it's not going to stand a chance? So why do it?
That's what I don't understand. I mean, there are a lot of people that I've talked to that are saying that this is, some sort of a slap in the face, because for McCain, the thumbs down guy, for McCain to actually join hands with somebody to do a piece like this that does not even even address or include the funding for the wall, like I said, is absolutely beyond me of why they would even introduce it, because he actually said, he's even tweeted it, if you had a question about it, saying, I will not sign anything if there's no funding for the wall.
Well, here's what's in their bill. The permanent legal status to pre-2013 Dreamers. We can take a look at this for everyone at home. An annual $110 million border security grant for 5 years. It adds 55 judges to the immigration court system each year for 3 years.
So what? I mean, these are things that they want. So what? That's fine. But did you see where there was only like $100 million? What is that compared to the $25 billion that he requested for funding for the wall? I mean, you know, how far do the Democrats, let's just say that, you know, they had the other part of this with McCain, how far do they want to hang DACA out to dry? I mean, this is their main deal. DACA are supposed to be, that's supposed to be
the deadline for that's March 5th.
Yeah. So what are they doing? What are they playing around with? Now, with that said, of course, you can always bring a bill and you can have addendums to it or whatever, and they can, you know, add that on. But why even do that and delay the process when you've got DACA people, you got the Dreamers scared, you've got Trump now irritated. Now you've irritated him. So I don't know what John McCain was thinking, and the reason I'm putting the emphasis on John McCain because he is the Republican that helped, you know, craft this with the Democrats.
And has to get 60 votes to pass the House, so definitely won't do that. So it'll have to go back from the House back to the Senate, and then, like you said, they'll have to add things on.
So why do it?
The back and forth will continue. I don't know. Good question. Thank you so much, Nicole. Appreciate it, Noel. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour. And overseas markets opening in the red this morning, giving us a new idea where we stand after the historic Dow drop on Wall Street. What you can expect when the markets open here at home in just a few hours. Welcome back. A major Pentagon agency losing of hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. An internal audit finding that the domestic aid could not properly account for more than $800 million in construction projects. The Pentagon admitting to the issue, quote, saying, while there were shortcomings in documentation, there was no loss of accountability of real property or associated funding, whatever that means. Well, the Navy, in the meantime, is testing a new ship that can travel thousands of miles without a single crew member on board. It's called the Sea Hunter. It's a 132-foot self-driving vessel. Look at that there. Wow. It's meant to hopefully track down hostile submarines. And this costs $20 million to build and $20,000 a day to operate. Significantly less, though, than a crew-run ship. And it could join the fleet later this year. That's amazing. Well, the reopened cold case into the death of Hollywood actress Natalie Wood. Have you heard this? It is growing by the day. Investigators are now demanding some answers from her 87-year-old former husband and actor, Robert Wagner, who is a person of interest.
The version of events he's portrayed in the media really don't add up to what we found or what we found by talking to other people in that weekend. What they've seen, what they saw, what they heard.
Well, police say that Wagner has refused to talk, but they have interviewed more than 100 witnesses since her case was reopened, I should say, back in 2011. And some of them say that Wood and Wagner were heard arguing on their yacht back in 1981 before she was later found dead in the water. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau embracing political correctness by quickly correcting a young woman simply for using the term mankind. Well, the woman was asking Trudeau to make it easier for religious charitable organizations to provide help for those in need. 6 teenagers running for governor, inspiring lawmakers to make a policy change, though. The Kansas House Elections Committee voting unanimously to send a bill to House that would require all candidates to be at least 18 years old. Kansas apparently doesn't have an age limit. Candidates would also have to live in the state for at least 4 years. Now, that makes sense. If passed, it would not take effect until the next election cycle. So those 6 teenagers, I guess, can still run. Well, the time now is about 15 minutes until the top of the hour. Memo versus memo. Democrats trying to even the score by releasing their own competing version of the facts.
They were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not?
Why our next guest says the left has already lost the credibility battle